So, right after identifying the factors, okay, we have to discuss about the population growth curve. Okay, we should always indicate that the population growth curve is always sigmoid curve, okay, or S curve, because of certain factors. Okay, so first we have to provide a diagram for the population growth curve, and we have to label the parts in the population growth curve. So for example, if we have this diagram, okay, we actually see that this is an example of a sigmoid curve. So we have to make a diagram on what are the representations on this area. For example, on the first area, this is the lag phase, wherein there is probably the population is not yet increasing rapidly because the organisms are still adjusting on their conditions. So you have to explain the reasons behind, what the graph is actually telling you, or what actually the graph is explaining about. So it's very important that we need to further elaborate on the graph, because by elaborating further on the graph, we are actually helping the students on their analysis skills, because a lot of graphs are being provided in their exams. So one of which is the population growth curve. So right after, okay, so explain. Explain the reasons behind the event. So for example, this one, in the second area, we have to label this as the exponential growth curve. So usually in the exponential growth curve, there is a rapid increase. Okay? There's a rapid increase in the population because of certain conditions. So conditions such as increased natality rate, increased immigration rate, all of which are contributing to an increase in the population curve. Okay, so we can also indicate that certain conditions such as resources is also made available to the organisms or to the population. That's why there is an increase in the population. Okay, so once that we have discussed the population growth curve, okay, we should now discuss the factors affecting population increase. So once that we have identified the factors affecting the population size, what are the factors that could further increase a population? So like this one, of course, we cannot expect a population just to randomly increase, but there are certain factors that are needed, such as, of course, resources such as food source, okay, resources such as habitat, okay, so that is actually affecting the organisms in increasing population. Okay, so if we have identified them, then we can actually say that this is further increasing the population because it provides a very conducive conditions for the organisms to reproduce more, because the conditions are good. So we have to include the presence of predators. So this type, in the case of increasing population, we can actually relate this to what is occurring in human population, or just the normal population that is occurring in a specific ecosystem. Because in human population, students can actually relate to what is being discussed, because they actually see them But in the case of course, ecology, we have to also we have to explain this area in the context of ecology as well, because of course there are other factors such as predators, okay, wherein predators are they are organisms that are hunting for other animals for food. So in that case, the presence of predators would actually decrease the population. So apart from that, okay, we have to indicate the presence of disease or parasites. So of course, obviously, presence of disease and parasites, this decreases the population size. So if students can think of more factors, then so much the better. And if they're able to relate them to what is naturally occurring in the ecosystem, then it's better as well. So that would be all for populations. The next topic for ecology, evolution, and classification is the evolution part. So this would be a very short snippet of what is going to be discussed in the option D, evolution. So this is just basically a foundation of what evolution is. So evolution, this is actually the process of cumulative change in heritable characteristics of a population. So basically it shows us what are the commonly occurring characteristics that are present today and how they are related to the characteristics that are present in primitive organisms. So the reason why we have eukaryotic cells, because eukaryotic cells have evolved from prokaryotic cells. So there are actually evidences that are showing that evolution is occurring, because these are actually groups of organisms that has shown favorable characteristics that are able to survive and withstand conditions that has been present for a very, very long time. So the first thing that we need to discuss, of course, is the definition. Okay, so just like what I have said a while ago, it is a process of cumulative change. So it needs time. So we have to indicate it to our students that evolution needs or requires time for that. Okay, for us to be able to see that there are changes that are occurring in a specific group of organisms. So once that we have defined the definition, okay, we have to discuss the evidences for evolution. Okay, so of course the evidences of evolution, since this has occurred for a very, very long time, we have to show evidences, or we have to show proof that evolution is actually occurring. So the only proof that we can show are only physical proofs, such as fossils. Okay, so fossils. Of course, fossils, there are actually imprints of organisms that has been trapped in stone or in different type of material, and then since they were trapped in this condition, they haven't undergone decay. That's why the structure of their bodies has remained intact. Okay, so we have to indicate. We have to include selective breeding as well. So in the case of selective breeding, this is when people are actually choosing certain traits that can be passed on to the offspring. So we can actually show diagrams for selective breeding. So for example, selective breeding or the domestication of dogs. The reason why we have dogs is because before they came from, it is possible that they came from wolves. It's because wolves and dogs they're actually they're very similar to each other, but since there are domestication and there are certain steps that are being done by people for them to be able to select certain characteristics that can be passed on to the next offspring, then that's the time that they will be able to, when they're selecting these traits or these genes, they are able to benefit because they see that this trait is benefiting for the group of organisms. For example, we have the capability of wolves to contract smells for long distance. So since it's a good trait for dogs to have, then therefore they are able to breed organisms of wolves that can be that has these traits, and therefore when they have taken this trait to another offspring, then it's actually heightened. That trait or that gene is heightened for this group of organisms. So another evidence for evolution is homologous structures. So in the case of homologous structures, these are structures present in organisms, specifically vertebrates, that whenever they share the same structure. For example, having the pentadactyl limb, the arrangement of the pentadactyl limb shows that in mammals, specifically in mammals, the limb of a primate is actually the same as the limb of another mammal, such as like horses, so a group of horses. So it's just that even if they are being used in a different function, their structure is still the same. So we have this homologous structure. So the next area that we need to discuss under evolution is about carrying capacity. So the carrying capacity is basically a total or a maximum number of individuals that the environment can sustain.